Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are located. Geographically, I'm Brett Strauss, as Dina had mentioned, and today we're going to talk about employee coaching and progressive discipline. What I wanted to talk about today is just kind of the definition of progressive discipline, my preferred process, documentation. If you've ever worked with an HR consultant or you've ever had the unfortunate experience of hiring employment counsel to defend an issue, documentation is obviously their favorite word, and nowadays, going into 2025, that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So talk about that and spend some time there. Progressive discipline meeting, what those meetings look like, how you should prepare for them, some guidelines and best practices. And again, we should have about 10 minutes or so at the very end to be able to answer all the questions that you post in the Zoom chat. All right. Progressive discipline is a method that involves taking disciplinary action steps with employees where consequences increase in severity if performance issues and or violations continue, right? So I think that's the fundamentals of what we're talking about here is figuring out, what type of business do you have? What type of employees are you working with? Okay. And how are we going to develop a plan that is appropriate for your workplace? Okay. Here at Pay Entry, right? We're in 95% of our employees are remote. We do have a handful of office locations around the country, but most of our employees are remote. We're dealing with, professionals, whether it's payroll professionals, HR professionals, IT and security professionals that are protecting our databases, et cetera. So, for argument's sake, if we have a payroll professional that makes, an egregious mistake when it comes to security, maybe they're not safeguarding data or something to that uh, effect, then I don't need to have a progressive discipline plan, to whereas I'm going to give somebody 4 or 5 chances, to get it right. We're dealing with highly sensitive data, social security numbers, bank accounts, people's payroll, a lot of money, right? You're not going to get a lot of chances to mishandle information here at Pay Entry. But if this is let's just say it's a pizzeria and somebody makes a mistake on an order, right? And it ends up costing, we have to remake a pizza and we lose, $4, our cost. Do we really want to maybe terminate somebody right off the bat for making an error? Probably not. We'll sit down, we'll coach them, we'll figure out, hey, you know what? It's okay. That's one mistake, but you're not going to make the same mistake again because we can't just keep throwing away pizzas because you're not paying attention, right? So that's an easy example of how we would talk through this and come up with a customized progressive discipline plan that's specific to your organization. The ultimate objective of this plan is to help the employees correct the conduct problems and resolve the issues right off the bat in the earliest stages. Okay, and this is something that a lot of people sometimes don't understand or they screw up, right? Think about how much time you spend recruiting, right? Hiring, training. Okay. It's a pain. There's a lot of time and effort and energy spent into job postings on Indeed or, on LinkedIn or Craigslist or, word of mouth, through your current staff to try to locate, the best new talent to bring into your company. Okay. You're interviewing them. You're going through the job offer process, the background checks, maybe the drug tests. You're bringing them on, you're training them and they make mistakes. Okay. Well, it shouldn't just be, well, this person made a mistake, we need to now get rid of them and go back to the drawing board. It's not the most efficient. It's a tremendous waste of money. And then it's also you have the HR side of things, the culture aspect that a lot of people don't necessarily consider, right? Do you want to be seen as an employer who, the first time somebody makes a mistake, you kind of just, cast them aside and they're written off, and there's really not this, this, culture in your workplace environment to where, hey, it's okay. You make a mistake, your manager or ownership is going to help you. They're going to address the issue immediately, but they're going to then give you an opportunity to correct your behaviors, right? Or correct your poor performance. But, with that being said, within reason, right? We're going to message this, we're going to talk to you about it, and then we're going to put clear guidelines in place that if you don't improve upon the performance, then we're going to have to part ways because we're not going to be, continuing to carry employees that just aren't going to be able to get it, and they're going to continue to kind of drag us down. Some examples, right, that would require progressive discipline. Um, Violation of company policies. And that could be anything, any company policy. That's why it's important that you're always taking a look at your employee handbook, at least once per year, because almost every state, adopts new legislation around this time of the year and implements it in January, right? January and or July are usually the most common time frames, right? The calendar year, the fiscal year, when most states will enact new legislation. So you should be reviewing the handbook and making sure that as your company changes, as your needs change, that you're monitoring those policies and that you're checking in with us so that we can help you redraft them to keep things going in the right direction, especially now in a remote environment. We have a lot of clients that, post COVID have, maybe downsized the office location. Maybe they're hiring, remote employees. What state are your employees in? This is another thing that a lot of questions I get, on the phone or via email is, oh man, Brett, I didn't realize. Like, we're here in Southern California and I just hired Jenna and she's in Maryland. And I didn't realize now I have to have a Maryland HR policies and Maryland laws in my handbook. Well, I've been in California for 30 years. I don't know anything about Maryland. Well, the employment practices and the laws that you must follow are based off of where your employees reside, not necessarily where they're performing all of the work. Okay. There's an analysis that goes on, so we need to be aware of all that stuff, right? We're paying payroll taxes in the state, now of Maryland where Jenna resides. And, I need to make sure that I'm up to speed on Maryland employment law so that I'm doing things correctly. Okay. Any company policy, attendance, dress code, behaviors, conduct, how am I treating clients, right? How am I sending emails out to clients, right? Am I, sending things that I shouldn't be sending, right? Am I misusing the internet is a big one this time of year, right? Got a lot of calls. Brett, you know what? I have my sales reps. My IT's tracking and they're online shopping. They're on Nordstrom all day long instead of calling customers because they're doing Christmas shopping. It's a problem, right? We need to be able to address that. Insubordination, right? You ask an employee, hey, Jenna, you know what? Here's what I need from you today. And she has some kind of a response that she's not interested in, following, the plan that I set in play for her today or this week. Brett, I'm taking a few days off. Well, not really, because you didn't submit your time off. That's a big one around this time of year. People who don't necessarily have time off, right? They ran out of sick pay, they ran out of vacation, and they just pretty much tell you that they're not coming to work on Friday, right? That's insubordination. That's a violation of company policy, and we need to address that and make sure that we have consequences. Theft or dishonesty, that's an easy one, right? That's not going to be acceptable anywhere. Harassment, okay? Different states have different laws when it comes to the threshold of what is and what isn't harassment. Attendance issues is a big one. And just poor performance, right? We don't have to be held hostage by employees. Okay, you'll hear me say that time and time again. If this is your first webinar, or if you've been on, tens or hundreds of my webinars in the past, that's one of my favorite terms to use because a lot of people are just nervous about it. They don't like confrontation, right? Or they're in California and they're kind of, if I take action, I'm going to get sued, right? You don't have to be held hostage by underperforming or poor performing or insubordinate employees, okay? That's what I'm here for, right? I will help you, right? Whether you need me to be a part of a disciplinary meeting, whether you need me to be on a Zoom meeting like this and coaching you and training you on how to handle it on your own, that's what we do here at Pay Entry on the HR side to be able to support you so that way we can identify issues immediately and come up with an action plan to either coach up or coach out. Okay. The process, right? Progressive discipline is the common practice that most employers use to address the employee issues, right? And then make sure that we are identifying them immediately, putting the burden then back on the employee to have an obligation to observe and follow the company policy and the standards of conduct, and then making sure that there's a clear um, path forward. That if you don't, if you fail to follow these policies and the standards, right, um, there's going to be further corrective action, and that may include termination of your employment. Okay, so you'll see a kind of an arrow here on the bottom, right? This is just a common step. Um, this works in some circumstances. We'll talk about suspension in a minute. I'm not the biggest fan of suspension, and I'll tell you why. But some industries, it's very common. Some people use that, and it's effective, but it's not necessarily one of my preferred, steps to take with performance and behavior issues. Okay. Um, it's also, you know, um, making sure that when you are working with HR on drafting these policies and implementing them, that everybody in your organization is on the same page. All of the managers need to know what the expectation is. Okay. All of the employees need to be able to know what the expectation is. Another issue that happens is if we have multi-locations or we have different managers that are playing by different rules. That's another huge issue, right? Supervisor liability when it comes to following the process that you um, set up. Okay. What do I mean by that? Well, let's just say we develop a process just like this one that's here on the arrow, right? A four-step process. But maybe you have a Northern California, location and a Southern California location. And Brett, he manages Southern California and he's, managing according to these four steps. But, Dina up north, in Sacramento, she kind of skips the third step, right? After the written warning, she goes straight to termination. Well, that's a discriminatory business practice that could potentially lead to a wrongful termination complaint, right? If everybody in Southern California is getting four chances and in Northern California you only get three, that's not equitable, right? And that's an easy way that you'll get sued, especially here in California. So again, things like this, making sure that we're drafting clear policies and that we're then rolling it out across the company and having a way to inspect that. Again, another service that we provide to be able to draft and then coach and train the people that report to you, that work for you, so we can ensure that everybody understands what this means and how this kind of comes to fruition if we have an issue. Progressive disciplinary policies, again, managers and supervisors, right? We need to give them the tools that they need to ensure consistency. And any type of inaccurate or poorly written policy is going to, it absolutely will jeopardize the at-will relationship. So what do I mean? Well, the most common issue I guess that I bump into, and this is, doesn't matter which state we're talking about, it's all states, right? Lawsuits, employees decide to sue employers, okay, because they feel aggrieved in some capacity, right? They feel that they were taken advantage of, okay? And look, pay entry, now we've grown to the point where we have about, I think about 6 or 7 thousand clients that we serve, okay? And part of my role, in the HR services department is to help our clients manage, these employee disputes, whether it's, unemployment, whether it's the Department of Labor, whether it's a full-blown, civil lawsuit, regardless of where it is across the country. And we don't have any clients. I have not seen, any clients that intentionally, right, cut corners or intentionally do things incorrectly that are going to put themselves in hot water. Okay. Almost every claim that I get involved in is our client means well, right? They think that they're doing the right thing. They're trying to do the right thing and be generous, but there are poorly written or poorly executed policies, right? Or poorly trained managers that make silly mistakes that end up setting these events in motion. Okay. And just so you know, the first, the first rule when it comes to litigation, right, is any type of inaccuracies or poorly drafted policies are going to be held against you, the employer, the drafter of the agreement. Okay. So if you have a handbook that's stale, like our handbook has been updated in 5 years, it's cooked right off the bat. Okay. If you go into a lawsuit and they subpoena your records, and your handbook is last year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, a judge is going to automatically rip the whole thing up. It's not going to be able to be entered into evidence, and you're now defending an employment claim with no handbook. It doesn't matter. They're not just going to say, "Oh, well, this policy is wrong." Okay, well, let's look at the other 55 pages. It doesn't work that way. It's one and done, and that's why you see all of the information that we send out. Hey, handbook is important. It's got to be kept up to speed. Your employment practices, your job descriptions, you got to be able to keep everything updated, because if it's not, you're done. You might as well just settle it right there off the bat, because you're not going to be able to defend it if it's poorly drafted or if it's stale. Okay. Um, Consistency is the most important. We've already kind of touched on that. We have to make sure that everybody under your roof knows what we're doing and they're committed to following um, the same process, regardless of where they're located. Okay. Um, I wanted to throw on some examples here, some samples of documents that you can kind of see, and we'll talk about all of this. Okay. Step one, the verbal warning. Okay. Here are just these bullets as to some basics. Okay. But times have also changed a little bit. Okay. So depending on your style, okay, depending on where, on how you're kind of organized or where your employees are located, this kind of formal document like this might not necessarily work for you. And it's okay. It doesn't have to work for you. Okay. You'll see the bottom bullet here, email recap. Let me give you a sample violation and a way that I like to tackle it personally that you might find works for you. Okay. When I talk to employers, right, when they're calling me and saying, "Brett, you know what? Oh man, we got a huge issue. I need to talk to Dina. We've got a lot of, she's just not getting the job done." Okay. And I ask, okay, well, where's the documentation? Share with me with what happened. How many times have you talked to her? Let me look at this progressive discipline plan. Okay. So I can unpack it all and I can give you my best advice as to how to move forward. Okay. The most common one is, well, look, I've talked to her about 4 or 5 times. Okay. Where? Show me. Well, I don't have anything in writing. Okay. Why not? Well, it's just like, I mean, look, I'm the owner. I'm flying all over the country, meeting with clients and selling, and I'm at conventions, and I don't have time to really sit down and fill out all these documents. It's just too much of a pain for me to go down this path. Totally, I get it. Okay, totally get it. An email recap is just as effective, right? It is a verbal warning. Okay, so let's just say today, right? So I'm looking outside my window here behind me. I have Nick sitting behind me. Okay. Let's just say Nick comes into work. He's supposed to be here at 8 o'clock. It's 8:05 and I see Nick walking in. Okay. I'm not going to open my door and start screaming down the hallway, "Nick," and lighting him up in front of all of his colleagues. That's not effective. Okay. I'm going to lose credibility with my employees. Nobody's going to want to work with you if that's how you approach them. Okay. I'm going to do something like this. "Hey, Nick, come here for a second. When you clock in, get your coffee, then come here for a second." He'll walk into my office. Hey man, is everything okay? Yeah, Brett, what's going on? Well, you're supposed to be here at 8, and I noticed you came in at 8:05. I just wanted to make sure you're all right. Yeah, Brett, I'm sorry, man. I got stuck in traffic, or I needed to stop and get gas, or I needed to drop my son off at school. Whatever the excuse is going to be, I've heard them all. Okay. And that's not why we're having this conversation. Nick, man, look, I'm a dad as well, right? I understand, your kids are running late. You dropped the kids off at school. There was a school Christmas performance this morning. Whatever, I get it, Nick, right? But our employee handbook, right? If you look at page 32, it states that if you are running late, you must notify your manager immediately. Okay. It's not fair to your other colleagues that you're not here and they're doing your work for you. The phones are ringing at 8. Okay. And now, we've put everybody else in a pickle because you're not here and you didn't notify me, because if you did, I would have been able to stop what I'm doing and jump on the phone to cover you. Yeah, Brett, you're right. I apologize. And that's no problem, right? Let's just make sure that moving forward, you follow the plan, the policy. All right, Brett, I'm good. I get it. Right? He walks back to his desk and I just send an email. Hey, Nick, you know what? Hey, thank you for coming in my office this morning again. Right? I understand things come up, but please make sure, and I can cut and paste then the policy that I'm referencing in the handbook. Okay. And I'm pretty sure you have my cell phone, Nick, but here it is again. Okay. Done. That right there was a 2-minute conversation with Nick, another 2 minutes to send a quick email recap, and I'm done. That is a verbal warning, but bulletproof, right? Because it has now, I emailed it to him, right? Now I can take that email and I can file it in his personnel file, or I can store it in the cloud somewhere, wherever I keep my HR records, right? It has its date and time stamped from the email, and I know he received it because he's here. Done, right? That's one way. That's one of the ways that I think is working best for a lot of our clients, especially in a remote environment. Okay. If Nick was at home and something happened, yeah, I'm not gonna create this big document you're looking at on your screen. Then I got to scan it and I got to fill it out to Nick and he's got to sign it and scan it back. And it's just huge, big formal, pain in the neck, right? You don't necessarily need to go down this path. You can, right? It's not wrong to do it this way if this is what you prefer, but this is not the only way. It shouldn't be prohibitive, right? The most important thing is that we address issues immediately. Okay, immediately. So, one of the favorite examples that I have is, my son. He's 7 years old, right? He's full of energy. If I come home from work and he's jumping up and down on the sofa, right? And I look at him and I just turn and walk away, what's he gonna think? Oh, well, dad saw me. All right, it must be cool. Like, all right, I'm good. I can keep doing it. Right? No, right? I'm not screaming at him, right? I'm not whacking him. I say, hey, buddy, you know better, man. Get down. That's not acceptable. That's it. All right, yeah, all right. He gets it. He jumps down. I've addressed it, and I can move on, right? So we cannot allow issues, in our workplace to continue to fester, right? If it's an attendance issue, if it's a mistake, if it's behavioral issue, we have to address things immediately. Okay, so we talked to Nick. We're on the same page. Now, if it happens again, okay, now we're going to the written document, and we're going to kind of ratchet up the the heat a little bit. Nick, right? I talked to you back on December 17th at 8:05, right? Remember, you told me that you were at your son's Christmas event at school, but you didn't tell me. Yeah, I remember. Right? Here's the email. And it's happening again. You showed up late and you didn't notify me. Okay? And then we could go through more of a full, you know, written warning document similar to this. There are different templates and formats that we can create. We can customize them, whatever you're comfortable with. But again, we need to make sure that it's very clear, date and time, right? The nature, the dates of the previous. So now we're ratcheting up that heat. Hey, we've already talked about this. Okay. We need to have a plan for improvement. Okay. And obviously an attendance issue is tough when we're talking about plan for improvement, because there's really no, I mean, you're either here on time or you're not. But again, let's just say it's that pizza, right? Right. You're misreading the tickets, right? Again, this is how you make a cheese pizza. Here are the steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? I've also taken now 10 minutes to show you again, and we can add that, right? You got confused, you keep switching the steps, you keep forgetting something. I've shown you now, this is the third time that I've trained you on how to make a cheese pizza correctly, okay? And if it happens again, right, we're going to have to discuss, potential termination of employment, okay? And then we have them both. I sign off on it as the manager. I have the employee also sign off on it, okay? Um, the final warning, right? And again, as I said at the very beginning, okay, you don't have to have 3 steps. You don't have to have 4 steps. It can be 1 step, depending on the line of work you're in and the severity of the violation. Okay. Um, and this is, I think, where we do our best work together is we need to understand what have you been doing, what's working, what's not working, what are some of the violations and some of the issues that you're dealing with, and then we can make recommendations to help you. Okay, like maybe you want to have a 3 strikes and you're out. Maybe it's only 2. Maybe we give the verbal, written, and then after that it's final. Hey, you know what, Nick? Man, I love you. You're a great employee, but if you're not here on time, you're not being a good teammate, you're not serving the clients, and it's just I can't continue to deal with this. So I'm letting you know right now that this is the final warning. Okay. Any further violations of company policy will result in further corrective action up to and including termination of your employment. Period. Okay. A question that I get asked a lot is, do we have to kind of section off the violations, right? Meaning, well, do I have to give them 3 chances for attendance and 3 chances for behavior and 3 chances for like a dress code violation? Absolutely not, right? We're not giving people 9 chances to screw up. It's 3 violations, cumulative, period. Okay. So even though his first 2 violations were for attendance, okay, if this afternoon he has an issue on the phone with a client to where he's out of line, he's gone. That's it. Okay. 2 attendance violations, 1 violation of company policy. For somebody else, that's it. 3 is 3, out. Okay. That's why we draft it. That's why the language on the documents that I draft for you, right, that we'll implement together is any further violation of company policy, right? Not any more attendance issues, not the next time you're late. Okay. We have to be very, very specific as to what we are looking for and the policy that we're going to enforce. Okay. Suspension. Okay. Let's talk about it here. Again, I don't necessarily like suspension. Okay. It does have its place. There are some um, industries. I know we have a lot of transportation clients, truck drivers, dock workers, delivery, et cetera. It's an industry custom that they've been using for years, and it's still sometimes effective. No problem. If that's something that you're used to and it has worked for you in the past, then we can incorporate that into the progressive discipline. If it's not something that you're comfortable with and that you've done in the past, then I avoid it. Because if we were talking about entry-level employees, okay, employees that might be earning minimum wage, they're already scraping by. They're already living paycheck to paycheck, okay? And if they're living paycheck to paycheck and they're making mistakes at work, they're clearly not in the right headspace. And all that a suspension is doing is now sending them home without pay and putting them in even a bigger hole, okay? It's just not effective in my opinion, right? I've never seen it, in most of the times I've never seen suspension work. All it does is throw gas on the fire and just, give the employee a reason to try to, come after you in some type of an agency complaint or a lawsuit. Okay. If it's serious enough that you're considering suspension, it's probably serious enough to where termination of employment, should be considered, and it's probably the best route. So then we can talk about that and figure out how to, you know, to plan that exit meeting, so we can make sure we cover all of our bases. Okay. The termination. Okay, Rob, obviously the final step in the progressive discipline process, when all prior attempts to improve, or correct have failed, right? Um, we just have no choice. We have to part ways. Okay. When it comes to termination, my philosophy is if you are going to terminate an employee, okay, they should always see it coming. They should know that it's coming. Okay. If you're terminating somebody and they are absolutely floored and shocked, you're making a mistake somewhere. Okay. Your process is backwards. You're going to end up getting yourself sued, right? The most effective termination meetings, the ones that I conduct, is I say, Dina, we need to have a conversation. And she comes in my office and she's like, Brett, I know what you're going to tell me. I've already been looking for a job elsewhere because, back in September, you gave me the initial warning. In October, we met again, and I wasn't able to improve on my performance. I've been waiting to have this meeting. I thought you'd probably have done it by Thanksgiving, but I really appreciate you that you gave me a few extra weeks to hang on here. But I know I'm just not cut out for this role. If your termination meetings aren't like that, you're doing something wrong. Okay, they should be like that. We should not be blindsiding employees with a termination. Okay. Because we've already met with them, right? We wrote them up the first time and put them on notice that, hey, this behavior is wrong. We talked to them again the second time. Hey, this behavior is wrong. So that when the third or fourth time comes around, I mean, unless they're in outer space, they'll know, yeah, I know. You know what? My time's up here. I got you. Okay. And if it's a severe enough violation that we have to terminate the first time or the second time, then again, they're not going to be shocked. Yeah, you know what? I screwed up. I stole from the cash register, right? I told the customer to, bleep this and bleep that via email, or I got frustrated and yelled at him in the store, right? Yeah, I screwed up. I know I'm going to get fired, right? I harassed my colleague, right? I sent a picture, to a colleague of mine that I shouldn't have sent. Yeah, you're going to fire me. I get it, right? So, um, just keep that in mind. Okay. If you've had in the past termination meetings where people have just been floored, there's something wrong with your process. And that's okay. You're not the only one, right? That's why we are here, right? Brett, Jenna, Melissa, Adina, Rika, the ladies on my team are tremendous. Laura, right? This is what we do. We are a support mechanism for you to be able to ask questions and help you so that we can do this correctly and we can prepare for these meetings so that they don't spiral out of control. Um, or the termination meeting. Again, we're having a conversation. Okay. Um, we're going to talk about it beforehand. You're going to call, you're going to email HR and say, hey guys, HR, I need to have a meeting today with Brett. We put him on a warning. It was this day, here's everything. We'll look at it. I agree. I think you've done a great job of driving home the point. You've given Brett ample time to be able to correct behavior. Let's get ready for this termination meeting. Okay. Our job is to prepare you with all the final documents, right? Each state has specific documents that you need to have with you in the termination meeting, right? Final paychecks, things of that nature. Final paycheck law is different state to state, right? In California, you need to have the final paycheck with you in the termination meeting. Some other states will allow you to just send the final check on the next scheduled payroll, right? But just some basics here. We don't need to kind of go through all of them right now, but some of them are common sense, making sure that obviously the meeting's done in private. You should always have a witness, right? Always, whether it's a manager, another colleague, whether it's Brett there virtually, that we can uh, be a witness. That's part of the services that we provide is maybe, hey, I don't have anybody else, right? We're all virtual, right? So I'm going to be on it as the owner, Nick as the employee, and I'm going to hire pay entry to be, on there as a third, witness to be able to document things. No problem. Okay. But if it is face to face is always best. If you're going to deliver bad news, it's always best to be face to face if you can make that happen. But again, I get it that, we're heading into 2025. It's not always possible. So there are other ways that we can organize the meeting. Okay. We want it to be clear. Okay. Just think about it in general. Okay. in anything that you do, when you're having a conversation with a family member or a child, right, or a friend, okay? If I were to come up to you and say, "Hey, Kevin, man, you keep screwing this up." What? Right? You're gonna if somebody just comes at you or hey, you're always late. Like, what are you talking about? I'm here every day. I come to work every day, man. I'm your best employee. I'm always working hard. Okay. If you come at people, with a kind of a very vague and generic approach, you're going to get resistance and pushback always. Okay. But if I sit down with you and I say, "Hey, Kevin, I'm concerned about your attendance." Okay. Here's your timesheet. I've gone through this is every day so far in December, and you can see there's been 17 days in December, and you've been late 9 times, right? How is an employee going to argue with that when you come in with that level of detail? They're going to be like, "I didn't realize it, man. I'm sorry." Yeah, 8:01, 8:02, 8:05, 8:07. Late is late. This is unacceptable, right? So again, this doesn't necessarily have to be the termination meeting. Any meeting that you're having with an employee, detail clearly stated problems, clearly outlined expectations, and details are extremely important because you're going to immediately, right off the bat, disarm the employee, okay, so that you can get their attention and have a conversation about what it is that you want to discuss. Right? But if you're just frustrated and you're always late, you're always making mistakes, you keep screwing up, right? These are common things that I hear in these meetings. And I'm like, it's not effective. They're going to keep pushing back. And then once an employee gets defensive, they're not hearing you, right? They're not hearing what you're telling them. And they just want to fight you and being delivered. And it's just, you know, combustion from there on out. It's very, very hard to rein that back in. Okay. Uh, Again, just the overview here of the importance, and we're getting here to the end. In about 10 minutes or so, we'll stop for some questions. I see that there's some in here, um, and we'll walk through anything that you've got, right? But we need to make sure that we have a consistent, and an objective and a fair process. Okay, open communication, because here's something else, guys, that I see a lot. Okay, Nick, you know. Um, I'm looking here at your work product. You're supposed to make widgets, and you keep they're all wrong, right? This piece is supposed to be on, you got the right side on the left. Your process is backwards, right? Talk to me about that. Like, let's go back about the training. And it's like, "Oh, well, I didn't get any training." What do you mean? Right? What do you mean? Melissa's your manager. Like, is it? No, like Melissa, yeah, I see her every once in a while. She did my new hire training, and I haven't seen her since. What? And I look and like, "Oh, well, Melissa's been on vacation for the last 2 weeks." Vacation, right? So little things like why would HR hire a new employee, Nick, put him in a department with Melissa when they knew Melissa was going to be on vacation for 2 weeks, right? And now I have this guy, Nick, who's screwing up my process and costing me a lot of time and money because there's no manager oversight, right? And it sounds silly, but guys, I deal with this. I've seen this exact situation time and time again. Like, you're not setting the employee up for success, right? You, as the manager, as the GM or the owner, you're like livid because this is costing you thousands of dollars because we've got an employee who's making mistakes. Where's the manager? Or maybe the manager, is there but is like checked out. So some of these conversations, when we're objective and fair, we're asking questions, and it's not necessarily all the employee's fault. We have a manager issue. The manager's not doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? Or the manager is, and we just have a knucklehead employee that we have to get rid of. I mean, you'll never know what you find, but it's very, very important that we follow these steps and that we cool off and we ask a lot of questions to really find out what's happening. Because the supervisor issue happens a lot more than you think. Okay. A lot more than you think. It's the manager's not paying attention. The manager's not inspecting. The manager gave them wrong advice. The manager's leaving early or always at lunch or whatever. And we're hanging these employees out to dry. And you're actually, barking up the wrong tree. We should be addressing the manager. Look, it's not a one size fits all approach. We kind of talked about that, right? And I think that's why the pay entry HR team exists, right? Just like, your experience with us on the payroll side, um, it's very important that we listen, we ask you questions, we understand how you like to manage, okay? How you want to treat your employees, what your culture is like, so that way we can make the best recommendations that are tailored specifically to your company, right? We're not a bundle, right? This is not Verizon to where you call Verizon and you tell them, hey, I need internet. And they say, great, but here you got to take the landline phone, and the TV. I don't want a landline phone, right? Who has that anymore? Right? Well, yeah, you're paying, $150 a month regardless, so you might as well take all this junk that you don't need. That's not how we operate, right? We have a very, expansive menu of services, a la carte, right? And our job is to figure out who you are, where you are, what you might need, and then we can make those recommendations tailored to what you're telling us. And here's how we can best support you so that way, moving forward, you don't have to feel like you're on an island alone, that you've got support now to be able to um, help you walk through these issues. Okay. Um, each situation investigation, we'll talk about that. That's again a different topic for another day. We'll probably have a webinar in the next few months on investigations and other practices and protocols. I wanted to just throw that in because it's very, very important. Okay, that if an employee makes a statement or you receive a complaint, okay, we can't just sweep complaints under the rug. Okay, obviously out here it's a whole different ball game, but in every state now, right? The penalties for failure to investigate and failure to take action are more severe than the initial violation. So just a quick takeaway, right? If an employee comes to you, hey, Brett, you know what, this and this happened, we need to be able to have a complaint procedure, a mechanism to where we can receive that statement and we can think about it, we can talk to our managers, we can talk to other employees and kind of figure out what's happening before we just react and go through this progressive discipline plan um, based off of the information that we receive. Okay. Um, yeah, we talked about these already. Be timely, right? Consider whether or not the employee's been made aware, right? No surprises. If we're getting to a final warning, we're getting to a termination, no surprises, right? Be consistent. Okay. How we can help our whole company is based off of proactive compliance, right? Whether you use us for benefits, whether you use us for your retirement plan, payroll, timekeeping, HR, compliance, everything proactive. Okay. I can help you if you've already have an issue, if something's already on fire, I'm a good firefighter. You can call me and I'm glad to help. But it's too late. You've already felt that pain, right? And pain's usually associated with dollars. Okay. I would much rather help you now before you feel the pain so that way you don't ever have to feel it because it's not fun, right? It's not fun. Lawsuits, agency complaints are expensive, then they're a huge waste of time, and almost all of them can be avoided by proactive compliance. It's a lot cheaper to do it correctly now than it is to wait for things to explode. And scheduling a consultation, right? Jenna and I are always available. That's our role, is to be available for you. So we have our HR email inbox. We have our booking link. Your client advocate has access to that. So if you're on the phone with your client advocate and you have an HR question or you just, something kind of comes to mind, ask them, hey, can you help me get, a quick meeting with Brett and or Jenna so we can talk about, some of the services. And here, in front of you, this is just some of the things that we do, right? Employee handbook updates, different management tools, employee communications, HR audit is probably the most popular, right? Is spending a few hours with me, kind of digging through your entire process. Manager training, again, we kind of hit on that. That is a huge piece of what we do as well. Not we don't just we'll identify the issues. We'll help you draft new policies and implement them. And then it's the coaching and the training and the discussion so that everybody that works for your organization is on the same page and we don't have silly mistakes that are going to end up getting us in hot water. Okay. There, before I get to the questions, there is our email, right? So please, at any time, send an email. Ask questions. Hey, Brett, you know what? I had a situation I didn't really want to share on the webinar, but I need some help, and I'll be glad to jump in and reply immediately and help you with your specific question. Mary, do you recommend supervisor or HR conduct the progressive discipline meetings? What about the termination meeting, right? At another seminar I attended, they said HR should do the terminations and that the supervisor should not be present. Um, that's interesting, Mary, and you know, I I probably beg to differ with that, but it also depends on the circumstance. Okay, and I'll explain to you why. If it's a complaint, okay, if I'm gonna be terminating Jenna today, okay, or disciplining Jenna for some type of a hiccup that she's having with the super. Let's just say Jenna and the supervisor don't get along. There's been bickering back and forth. There's been allegations, harassment, or something, and the supervisor is kind of a sore subject. Then yes, I would probably proceed without the supervisor because we don't want to add fuel to the fire. Okay. But any other situation, the supervisor should be there. Okay. Because the reason why is because if an HR is always the bad cop, then HR is not going to be able to build rapport with employees to be able to get um, feedback, right? So if we're going to draft an open door policy for your company, okay, and we want employees to be able to share concerns. Hey, if you see something, say something. If there's any concern that you have, whether it's with a colleague, whether it's with a client, whether it's with a manager, you need to feel comfortable to come to HR to share, to know that HR is we're not the police. We're not here to get people in trouble. We are roadblock removers, right? We are here to make sure that we have a successful and welcoming workplace environment. But if every time I come to Mary, she's dropping the hammer and firing me or writing people up, I'm not going to really want to talk to Mary anymore, right? So that's why I say it really depends. But more often than not, the supervisor should be a part of that meeting because the supervisor would be the one along the way to address the issues. Hey, Nick, you came in late. That's not necessarily coming from HR. That's the supervisor. The supervisor is having that conversation with Nick and then copying HR on the that email, right? Or on that write-up that we kind of discussed. Give us a call. We are here to be able to support you and make sure that you have everything that you need in order to be successful. So right on time. Thank you guys so much for giving up time on your Tuesday to join me. I appreciate you all. Hope that you have a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. We'll see you guys again next month in January. Thank you.